This week on Rebuilding Me, meet Bret Burns. Bret Burns is a good friend of mine that I met a little over 10 years ago.
Yeah, been about 10 years now.
At a previous employer. Bret, back then, young, ambitious. Really, at the end of the day, I think it's interesting, we'll talk about it in a minute, but not exactly the same person.
No.
By any means, right?
Not even close.
So what does today look like for you? What are you up to these days?
Today, I'm married. I have actually just had my 4th anniversary.
Congrats!
So we've been married
That's awesome.
for 4 years. I actually, we've been together 10. So around that time was when I met her.
Right.
I have a career in tech. I'm a data center engineer for the 2nd largest software company in the world. So that's fun. And rewarding for me, especially from my roots and where I come from. And I'm very thankful to have that opportunity. And then really at the end of the day, I'm just a person living their life. We own our home, so I'm a homeowner trying to figure that thing out.
Fresh off your trip from Mexico.
Fresh off of a vacation from Mexico,
Yeah.
A well-deserved and much-needed vacation from Mexico. That's pretty much it. It's the general normal life that you would think of a 32-year-old, white privileged male. Yes, I did that.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
So tell me about that a little bit. Okay. Take me back to even before 10 years ago when we met, okay. But kind of what was little Bret like? What was it like growing up?
Little Bret was a shithead, mostly because I think I didn't have a lot of stability in my life. So, long story short, I can kind of just paraphrase it a little bit. From the point that I was born till 2 years old, my father and my mother weren't together. They didn't love each other. It was, for lack of better terms, it was an accident. But I came out, and at 2, my father and my mother were going to go to court for custody of me. And my mother went over to my grandmother's house where I was staying before the court and said that she just wanted to see me because she thought she was going to lose the court battle. And when I came out of the house, she grabbed me, got in the car, drove away, basically kidnapped me.
Your grandmother?
No, my mother.
Oh, your actual one?
Yeah,
okay.
Because she didn't think she was going to get custody of me. Got on a flight. This is in Oklahoma, by the way. I was born in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we'll talk about the shirt in a minute.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Boomer Center all the way. But anyway, she flew to Oregon. And my dad didn't know where I was until I was 9 years old.
No kidding.
And then one day when I was 9, my dad knocks on the door. Never met him before in my life. Only talked to him on the phone once. Says, get your things, you're coming with me. He drove all the way to Oregon. When he found me, he brought a police officer with him. That was a buddy of his.
Wow.
And also my grandfather. And picked me up and brought me back to Oklahoma. So I started my life with him. Lack of better terms, he had never been a father before. And there was a lot of turmoil of getting a 9-year-old that you didn't get to help raise, right? There was a lot of things.
Having to relearn, right? Learn how to be a parent. Yeah.
It was difficult. And then so, over the next course of years, I bounced around from Oklahoma to Arizona to back to Oklahoma to Las Vegas.
With dad or as a young adult?
It was with dad until 15 or 16. I kind of just left home on my own accord. Me and my dad never really got along at all. So at 15 I left, and I ended up going to juvie for a little while because I was running wild and didn't have too much guidance.
Right.
And a lot of that is crowd too, and the people that I was hanging out with. After that, I dropped out of high school. I moved to Las Vegas. From Vegas, I went back to high school in Oklahoma, moved back to my grandmother.
Did you really?
I did. Dropped out a second time, but then moved to Florida with a good friend's family. Spent some time in Florida, came back to Arizona, went back to Florida, came back to Arizona.
This is all by how old or what age?
The Florida, I was 18. when we moved to Florida. And then getting to where I met you, I was, I think, 20 or 21.
Yeah.
So it was about a
21.
year stint at each place, maybe 2 given here and there. It's all blurred now. Looking back, I'm like, I don't remember where and when I went and why I was there and what happened, But yeah, so there was a lot of instability. It really is the point of all of that. And the younger Bret was very. It was a strange thing, when I was in school, I was an athlete. I was a very good athlete.
What'd you play?
I played everything: baseball, basketball, track, golf, whatever.
Did you?
Yeah, I played everything. But in a small town in Oklahoma, your competition's limited. And when I moved to Arizona, it was kind of a whole new world, right? I went from a town in Oklahoma where my graduating class would have been about 83.
Wow.
And then I moved to Phoenix, to Hamilton High School in Chandler, where the graduating class was 1,200.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about 4,000 people in the school, opposed to 400. Culture shock.
Yeah.
My dad was very prevalent at that time on telling me, like, look, you can't play all the sports here. And even the athletic director, when I signed up for school, was like, hey, son, you play any sports? And I was like, yes, sir, I play all of them. He's like, you're going to want to pick one here.
Yeah.
And so I picked baseball. I didn't follow through with it because of the other problems that I had and other instability issues and leaving home and stuff like that. But the reason I talk about that is because younger me I had a lot of confidence. I had a lot of ego because I was very good at sports. And people, especially in Oklahoma, in that environment, in that culture, in a small town, when you're good at something, and more specifically when you're good at sports, a lot of the other stuff falls off by the wayside because that's your ticket out of the town, right? So.
And you're a big fish in a small pond.
Very much.
Not a big talent pool, so if you can do all of the above, great, cool, we'll tap you for this, we're going to tap you for that. Yeah.
100%. So much so that a lot of my deficiencies, even now as an adult, come from what was ignored then.
Right.
I didn't have to pay attention in school.
Right.
I was smart enough to pass tests without doing my homework, but school wasn't important to me, and at any point in my life was there anybody that was saying this is important, right? So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was trying to skate by with tests and 3 choir classes just so I didn't have to take it, right?
Yeah.
Any serious classes, so
no,
I'm with you.
And I even remember so much so that, like, my biology class was the assistant baseball coach at one point, and our field was 100 yards away. I was taking batting practice during biology class, and I passed with a B.
Right.
I couldn't tell you a thing about mitochondria.
I don't even know.
To this day, right? I don't know. And so a lot of that goes to say that person, as a child of who I was, I was dual focused in athletics and girls, and nothing else really mattered. And that kind of led me on a path that was just a wild, crazy, twisty-turny path, But as a child, that was difficult to deal with.
As you were going through, especially the high school years, and then as a young man bouncing around Florida, Arizona, Las Vegas, was there involvement from Dad? Because I heard you mention that Dad said at one point, XYZ about high school and sports and that kind of thing, but because Dad got custody, right, and he raised you from 9 on, was there ever a point where Mom did fold back in the picture, or?
No, Mom's been out of the picture pretty much. I mean, I did go back to live with her for a brief time in my freshman year, but to kind of give you an idea of what that relationship is like, there's a town in Oklahoma called Lane. Have you ever seen the movie 8 Seconds? Lane Frost is from Lane, Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's where my family
Oh, Luke Perry.
Yeah.
Oh.
Luke Perry.
So sad.
This
is my extra high.
That town is where that story is based off of. That town is a very, very small town. Not even one stoplight. There's one cross street. There's a couple, little grocery stores, but I have a lot of family in that area. When I lived with her, I lived in that town. There's no high school in that town. There's only an elementary school. In order to go to high school, I had to go to a town called Atoka, which was about 8 to 10 miles, give or take. I don't know I had to take a bus that way, or I had to get a ride into town to be able to go to high school there. There was a time where my mother told me that she wanted me to stop playing football because I needed to be able to stay home and watch my little brother, who was 3, I think, at the time.
Right.
And, being a young male where my whole life revolved around sports, that wasn't an option for me.
Right.
And in the argument, about 10 o'clock at night on the way back from Atoka, picking me up from a late football practice, she kicked me out of the car. And that was the last time I really ever physically saw my mother. I walked back into town. I went to the church that I had been attending with friends, Day Spring Church, and let them know what happened. Luckily, there were some guys at the church that were in the praise and worship band, and one of my friends that also attended that church let me stay with him for a while. I finished out the year then. My dad got custody of me again there, and we tried that again, and that's when we came back to Arizona. That was my first time back in Arizona, which was a sophomore.
So Dad was with you here when you moved back?
For the first year.
Yeah.
My sophomore year of high school, that's when I left, 15.
Where's Dad now?
He's still in Oklahoma now.
Is he?
Yeah, he got a job as a manager of an electronics store. And there no longer exists, so I think I can say Ultimate Electronics.
Oh, yeah.
That's what moved us out here. And then now he's working at Harley in Oklahoma.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so he's a Harley salesman. We have a relationship, and we became cordial, I would say, for lack of better terms now.
Sure.
It's not the best, but it's better than nothing in my opinion. But Mom's still not in the picture. The last I heard of her, she called me about 6 months after I lost my son, asking me for money. Never said a word about anything that had happened in my life at that point. So she's been out of the picture ever since, and there's really been no desire to rekindle that. You don't get to pick your family.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
True.
Sometimes.
Well, and you just touched on, probably one of the, I would imagine, pivotal moments in your life. And as a young man, after you and I met, and I know, there was some struggle there just as far as like figuring out who Bret was. Mm-hmm. Although I got to tell you, man, you came busting in the doors with this like light shining on you and earrings and tattoos and shit. And I was just like, wow, this kid's, impressive. Full of energy, full of ideas, full of, hey man, why can't we do X, Y, Z? And that was an interesting experience with you to kind of go through those first moments of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, like one of the first kind of solid jobs you had for a while, you had started seeing Cassie. So, right, it was kind of the beginning of.
Well, I don't know if you remember, and I actually don't remember, but I had 2 stints at AT&T. I left and I came back, and I think you were there for both of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you were, because Leadfoot happened on the first stint.
I had to sign off on hiring you back.
Yeah,
So,
there we go. Perfect. Great. Yeah. I didn't know that, or I don't remember it. Which I think is a part of how I've gotten to where I am today, is because a lot of it just in the trash.
Yeah.
I don't try to focus on like the specifics of my, let it go, right? So
I barely remember. So the
first stint was actually well before Cassie. The second stint was when I met Cassie. But that was the first real job that I had. I had worked at Best Buy before that. And I guess I could label that as a real job.
Yeah, not that they're not.
No, and it was really what got me interested in tech too. So I kind of have to credit Best Buy for that, because I really got interested. I was really good at explaining things to people. Like once I learned how to do it, that was when I feel like that was the first time in my life outside of sports where I was like, oh, there's something else I can do.
Right.
Like when I couldn't play baseball anymore because I hurt myself, like Best Buy was like, oh, wow, I am good at something else.
Right.
And that kind of led me down the path of being able to go to a place like we were working at and do some of the things that we were asked to do there. And I thought I was very good at that.
Right.
I definitely had some faults in that.
Some learning opportunities.
Yes, yeah. Some training opportunities, some growth opportunities.
No question. So did I.
Yeah. Well, that's what that job was for a lot of people. You look at a lot of people that we work with that are very successful now. that was kind of the starting point for a lot of people of just figuring out like what can we do, and the challenges of that job really set a lot of people up for success, I think.
Absolutely. I think it was even tougher. So just to kind of fill everybody in, we worked as contractors in an AT&T building. So we were managed by AT&T managers, but we reported to a third-party vendor or a BPO, a business process organization, and it was very challenging.
It was rough. I remember, depending on which contractor you had, depending on whether you could get E-time. So there was...
Get some time off.
Yeah, there was time off where you're sitting at work and all these people are leaving. You're like, why are they leaving? They're like, oh, they're with this contractor.
Right.
Well, we don't get to leave. No, we don't get to leave. And it's
Stay
like,
here.
I want to leave. So that was a challenge.
That's how they got paid.
Pay was different. There was a lot of pay gap differences depending on the contractor that you were with. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It was definitely a difficult job. But
and then no benefits, none. There was no... Right, there was a little bit of overtime, which was nice every once in a while, but
if you wanted it,
if you wanted it, but tough because you have to do it right as a contractor for a company like that. You have to do it better, faster, and cheaper than they do it themselves. You really have to actually beat them at their own game.
And to add to that equation, it was a brand new product.
Right.
So we're learning. Nobody, there wasn't anything like laid out in front of us. Like, hey, here's this product that's been supported for years.
Right.
We're asking these people that have been supporting it for years to teach you how to do it for cheaper.
Right.
That wasn't the case. It was like, we're just going to do it cheap. You guys figure it out, right? So it was such a learning curve and challenge, but it was fun. There was a lot of, like you said, there was a lot of growth there.
Yeah.
There was a lot of growth there.
And so to get back to the point, so you bounced out, came back, found out the grass was not greener.
Yeah.
I remember having that conversation with you. The grass is not always greener.
Yeah.
But then you started to really kind of drill down on what does it mean to be in a relationship? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be a young man figuring all this stuff out? So take us through that, and if you would, obviously I don't want you to share anything you're not comfortable sharing. But,
I'm open with.
How did that, to walk us through that progression of kind of trying to figure it out and then losing your son?
I don't know that there was ever a point where even that was prevalent to me on figuring out. I think it was just kind of happening naturally. Mm-hmm. When you're a young man, especially a young man without guidance, I don't think you fully grasp the situation that you're in, but you run into a lot of obstacles. You keep beating your head against the wall, and you eventually, with hopefully any intelligence at all, you realize, okay, I'm doing something wrong. I need to try to change something. And I think that second stint was a part of that. I had moved back to be with Cassie.
Right.
From Florida. I had a good thing going on in Florida. I was going to college. I had a family that was supporting me.
Right.
I didn't have to work, but I cared a lot about Cassie, and I wanted to move back to be with her. And when I got back, I didn't have anything. I brought a backpack. I didn't have a job. I was playing video games all day.
Right.
She was supporting me, right? And we got to a situation, she probably won't love that I'm open with this, but I think it's critical for a lot of people to hear. We got in a situation where she went off with another man, and I found out about it. And that was a pivotal point in the relationship, and this was before the second AT&T stint. Mm. And I remember vividly being in that situation and trying to figure out what to do in that situation. And I was thinking to myself, and it was the first time in my life where I took accountability. Because it was really easy up until that point in my life to look at everybody else and say, like, I'm hurt because of you. I'm here because of you. Whether it was dad, mom, whatever,
Right.
We covered. In that situation, it would have been really easy for me to say, we're over because of you. But when I don't know what it was. I can't tell you. Maybe there had been somebody in my life recently that had said something that kind of triggered something. I don't know. But that was the first time I said, well, let me look at the guy that she went off with. Oh, he's a AAA baseball player. Mm. Oh, he could go pro at any time. Oh, she doesn't have to pay for anything. She doesn't have to come get him and pick him up.
Right.
There were a lot of things that he offered that I couldn't offer. Because she was supporting me. I didn't have a job. She was paying my rent at another place, coming over after work to hang out with me there, then having to go home and do her own thing. And then, and then there's there's just so much that I was not offering to my girlfriend, to a significant other.
And at the very least, you're just, all you know is that there's you and there's him, and you're comparing the two and feeling like, I'm sure, you come up short.
Yeah. So, you know, we had a longest discussion, and at that discussion I said, look, I get it. I understand. I would have done. I would have too. I wouldn't be, and in fact, the relationship before that, I did.
Right.
I didn't want to support anybody else anymore, so I left, and I chose to do something else. And she was getting to that point, and I said, if you want to keep trying, I do have feelings for you that I haven't had for anybody else. I'd love to try to do this over. I'll get a job this week, and you know, you won't have to do this anymore. I will change what I'm offering.
Right.
And that was the first step. Like, in my entire life, that was the first step. And then it worked. It was slow. It was difficult to move past.
Process.
But
yeah,
it worked. I got a job at another call center doing similar type of things,
right,
but for way, way less money. And I think I had applied originally to AT&T and was told no. And then something happened where you guys had a hiring, you needed some people, and somebody that was there said, hey, you should come back. And it sounds like you were involved in the second one, and you helped me, and helped me get me back in, which was great. And then I think I was.
I mean, I'll take all the credit.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Understand, it wasn't me solely, but I remember those conversations with leadership of, you know, do we hire people back? That was a big. You were actually one of the first people that we had to really kind of make some decisions about. Do we hire people back, regardless of how they left, regardless of what happened, and the reason we had to have a conversation about it so in depth is because we had some parameters that the client. AT&T put in place for people that left, and could they return, and how, and all that. I went through it 3 or 4 times because I bounced around. Right, but that again, there was value. You brought value.
Well, I think the second stint I brought a lot more value. I mean, I thought I did well in the first stint, but I was very much just collecting a paycheck.
Right.
You know, at 18 years old, making $17 an hour, I thought I was, you know, king daddy shit.
Right.
None of my other friends were making $17 an hour.
Right.
I was good, right? The second time I came back, I had much more intention. You know, I need a job to support somebody or something, or really myself.
Right.
Right? It wasn't like I'm not out to have fun. Now I'm actually trying to accomplish a goal. And, you know, just that mentality shift and that perception and perspective shift, I think changed things for the second time around. I still made plenty of mistakes on the second time around.
You did.
But,
no, I'm just kidding.
But
and this is about 20. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 22, 23. Like
23.
In there,
Yeah, 23. So the first stint was 18 to like 22 or 21. I think it was the first time I was there. It was 2 years, just a little over 2 years. I left and then I came back and I was 23.
Right.
At the time, and I stayed till 25.
Yeah,
almost 2 years on the second stint too. So.
And then tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
Right. You're starting to build.
Yep.
You and Cass are growing in your relationship together.
Yep.
You've made conscious decisions now to invest in that relationship and stick it out for truly, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And then tragedy.
We got pregnant. The pregnancy itself was almost a miracle. My wife has endometriosis. She's a high-risk pregnancy. We knew that from the beginning.
Right.
She had already had a miscarriage, but it was very, very early on. We found out that she was pregnant. She lost that baby, and then she still felt pregnant after that. It was kind of a strange situation. So we went back into the doctor, and it turns out that she was pregnant with twins, and one of them had passed.
Oh my goodness.
And then it sounds weird, and I maybe not be presenting it correctly. It was very, that whole time was very, it is a blur. Something with the other one passing helped the one that was left over grow. And so when we got into the second trimester, it was like, wow, this is really happening. She's healthy. The doctors are saying she's good. There's nothing really going wrong. Like, this is really an option, you know. And that's when we started telling people, started getting really excited. And then, we had a full-term pregnancy, and our son was due on March 25th in 2013. My wife had some pain on the 21st, and we called the doctor's office. I said, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. And about an hour later, it still felt like it was a big deal, so we thought she was going to have the baby. So we went in.
Labor pain.
Yeah. And so we went in. It was about 11 o'clock at night on the 21st, and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And she had to give birth, a stillbirth, as if she was giving regular birth, but she doesn't get to take the baby home.
Full term.
Full term. Very difficult, yeah. Very, very, very difficult situation.
We went through it with my first wife at 6 months, which is still not easy.
It's not. And it's not any easier.
Right.
It's not any easier because, not to add insult to injury, but we just recently had another miscarriage, and it was not quite that long, but it wasn't any easier.
Right.
There was nothing easier about
At
it.
all. And we can't imagine.
Yeah, it's difficult.
We can't possibly imagine that, there's, granted, yes, there's a piece of us in there, right?
Yeah.
In the mix, but the truth is, she's carried the baby.
Oh, no, there's a great point to that.
Yeah.
There's a very great point to that. In the situation of experiencing that, as a father, I don't have the connection to that baby yet.
Right.
A father's connection begins when that baby's born. You hold it for the first time.
Right.
I never got that. My wife was carrying that and developing that baby for 9 months.
Right.
It's different. It's just different.